The morning of November 26, 1983, began like any other at Heathrow's industrial estate. A thick fog rolled over the tarmac, muffling sound and hiding shadows. Inside the Brinks warehouse, guards followed routine with sleepy indifference. They did not know that in the next hour, their ordinary shift would transform into one of the darkest chapters in London's history. The silence was broken by the hum of a van and the stomp of heavy boots. A storm of crime was about to descend.
The warehouse doors burst open as 6 masked men stormed inside. Their movements were sharp, the guards were thrown to the ground, bound with tape and immobilized. Gasoline was poured across the concrete floor, the pungent stench filling the air, carrying with it an unspoken message that defiance meant fire and death. In a matter of seconds, order had collapsed into chaos. The robbers moved quickly to the vault. Crowbars crashed against wooden crates, splinters flying. What they expected was foreign currency. What they found was far greater. Inside lay stacks of bullion bars, dull yellow under the strip lights, nearly 7,000 of them. In stunned silence, the men realized they had stumbled upon a treasure of unimaginable magnitude. 3 tons of gold sat waiting in neat rows, worth 26 million pounds. It was a fortune no one had planned for, a jackpot beyond fantasy. The guards, gagged and trembling, watched the robbers pause in disbelief. Then greed took control, and the warehouse erupted into frantic movement as men lifted bar after bar, straining under the weight, driven by adrenaline and hunger for riches. For nearly 2 hours the van was loaded. The silence was broken only by the grunt of effort and the clatter of bars. At last, the warehouse was emptied, and the white transit van rolled into the dense London fog. Inside, 3 tons of cursed bullion clinked softly, carrying not just wealth, but a legacy of destruction. The guards lay tied on the floor, left with the weight of fear and the knowledge they had witnessed history being stolen. To understand the crime, one must understand the city. London was a tale of 2 worlds. The city boomed with finance and global trade. Glass towers rose, bankers drank champagne, and fortunes multiplied. Yet only miles away, the East End suffered decay. Factories closed, docks silenced, and unemployment hollowed out entire neighborhoods. Desperation lingered in pubs where men dreamed of quick riches. Heathrow was the symbol of wealth passing unnoticed, guarded by men paid pennies compared to what they protected. Brinks was supposed to be impenetrable. It was built as a fortress of steel and discipline. Yet every fortress has weakness. Its weakest point was not the doors or alarms, but a man. A guard named Anthony Black carried in his pocket the power to betray. His brother-in-law, Brian Robinson, was no stranger to crime. Together, they unlocked the path that led to the robbery of the century. Black was an ordinary man with extraordinary temptation. Every day, he stood watch over fortunes he could never possess. The whispers of family turned into plans in pub back rooms. Money was promised, fear was dulled, and greed prevailed. Black agreed to open the way. None of them knew that instead of 3 million pounds in cash, they were about to stumble upon a treasure that would destroy them all. The robbers gathered their tools and courage. A simple van became the vessel for their ambition. Disguises were prepared, weapons chosen, shifts mapped. The plan was clean on paper, but paper plans rarely survive the weight of reality. Still, the van rolled forward, its tires cutting through the fog, heading toward a moment that would echo for decades. Inside the warehouse, the guards had no chance. Threatened with death, doused with fuel, they lay paralyzed. They were powerless witnesses to the greatest robbery in British history. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Each second stretched into eternity as the robbers moved with ruthless discipline. Lifting bullion is not easy. Each bar weighed 12.5 kilograms. The men sweated, their arms burning, their backs aching as they carried hundreds of bars into the van. What should have been a quick in-and-out robbery became an endurance test, their greed keeping them moving even as exhaustion clawed at them. When the last bar was loaded, the robbers disappeared into the fog. The van carried with it not only gold, but the seeds of betrayal, violence, and ruin. London slept, unaware that in those early hours, a new era of crime had been born. The bullion could not simply be sold, it had to be transformed. Workshops lit with roaring furnaces became temples of crime. Bars melted into liquid fire, copper mixed in, new shapes cast. What had been Brinks gold became indistinguishable from legitimate metal. The alchemy of crime had turned bullion into rings, coins, and chains. Within months, fragments of the stolen fortune gleamed in jewelry stores, slipped onto fingers in wedding ceremonies, and traded hands in markets. Ordinary families wore the glow of a crime they never knew existed. The nation itself was unknowingly decorated with the spoils of greed. But the gold carried a curse. Greed fractured alliances, men turned on each other, murders multiplied, bodies fell in alleys and country lanes. Journalists called it the Brinks curse, and for good reason. Every man who touched the fortune seemed to meet ruin. The scale of the crime forced action. Operation Magician was launched, one of the largest investigations in British history. Detectives pored over records, tapped phones, and interrogated suspects. They knew the gold was out there, slipping into the bloodstream of the economy, poisoning everything it touched. Some men were caught. Brian Robinson and Michael McAvoy received long sentences. Anthony Black, the inside man, was exposed and imprisoned. Yet for all the arrests, the gold itself remained elusive. Less than 10% was ever recovered. Justice caught bodies, but not bullion. The stolen gold became seed money for empires. Cocaine flooded into London, fueled by Brinks wealth. Nightclubs thrived, properties bought, businesses funded, all with tainted metal. The underworld and the legitimate world blurred into one. The line between businessman and gangster became invisible. Murders piled up. Those who touched the fortune were hunted. Some were executed in cold blood. Others vanished without trace. Families lived under threats. Children grew in fear. The curse of the bullion did not stop with the thieves. It spread outward like a disease. For ordinary Londoners, the robbery became legend. Headlines spoke of gold and murder. People whispered about cursed jewelry. Trust in the system eroded. The city felt darker, its soul poisoned by crime it could not see but could always sense. Years turned to decades, yet the gold never vanished. Instead, it circulated endlessly, melted and reshaped, passed from hand to hand, always carrying with it the stain of blood. The curse of Brinks was not a myth. It was history repeating itself with every transaction. The robbery changed London forever. It supercharged organized crime, funded violence, and left scars on communities. It was more than a theft. It was a turning point where greed consumed order and lawlessness left its permanent mark. Some robbers lived to old age in prison cells. Others died in pools of blood. None found peace. Their families carried shame and fear. The survivors carried regret. But regret could not erase history. Even now, fragments of the stolen bullion exist in homes, in banks, in markets. Rings, coins, and chains still gleam, silent reminders of that morning in 1983. The gold remains, indifferent to the suffering it caused, glowing with false purity while carrying the weight of curses. November 26 began with routine and ended with ruin. 6 men carried away 3 tons of treasure, but in doing so, they carried away London's sense of safety. What was meant to be fortune became fire. What was meant to be wealth became a curse. The Brinks heist was not just the robbery of a warehouse,